Stop right now. Put everything else down and listen. I am not calling from a distance, and I am not waiting for a better moment. I am calling you right now because this hour carries weight you cannot postpone without consequence. Your heart already feels the urgency, that tightening, that stillness, that knowing. This is not coincidence. This is intention. I am speaking to you personally, pressing through the noise, because what I am about to reveal requires your attention, your honesty, and your immediate response. Do not look away. This moment is alive, and it is meant for you. Listen, stop what you are doing right now. I am not whispering this moment into existence. I am breaking into it, because what is unfolding between you and me cannot be postponed without cost. I interrupt your thoughts, your scrolling, your planning, your excuses, because heaven itself has leaned forward toward you. This is not random, and it is not dramatic language meant to stir emotion. This is precision. I speak now because delay has become comfortable for you, and comfort has quietly dulled your obedience. You have learned how to survive without fully listening, how to move through days without truly responding, but I did not create you merely to function. I created you to answer when I call. And I am calling you now, not to frighten you, but to awaken you. You feel something tightening in your chest as you read this, and that is not fear, it is recognition. Your spirit knows my voice even when your mind wants proof. I am stepping into your moment because this hour was marked before you ever named your doubts or learned your defenses. Long before you learned how to hide, I knew where you would be sitting, what you would be wrestling with, and how close you would be to giving up on the very thing I planted inside you. You think this interruption is inconvenient, but it is mercy. If I waited until you felt ready, you would wait forever. Readiness is not the requirement, attention is. I am interrupting you because heaven will not compete with your distractions. I will not shout over noise you refuse to silence. I step in when the weight of life finally makes you still enough to hear me. The unrest you've been feeling, the sense that something is unfinished, the quiet dissatisfaction even when things seem fine, that is not confusion, that is alignment pulling you out of place. You were never meant to settle where you are, and deep down, you know it. That knowing is my fingerprint on your heart. Do not misunderstand me, I am not angry with you. I am intentional with you. I am not here to condemn the time you wasted, but to redeem the time you still have. I interrupt because I love you too much to let you drift into a life that merely looks acceptable but never becomes eternal. You have been telling yourself, later I'll listen, later I'll respond, later I'll change, but later is the language of fear dressed up as wisdom. Right now is where faith breathes. Right now is where obedience begins. I see the way you hesitate, the way you check your own worth before you check my will. I see how you assume I only speak to others more disciplined, more spiritual, more certain. But hear me clearly, I did not call you by accident, and I am not confused about who you are. I am calling you because I know exactly where you are standing, and I know what waits on the other side of your yes. This interruption is not chaos. It is order being restored. So do not rush past this moment. Do not minimize it. Let it sit with you. Let my words press gently but firmly against the walls you've built. I am not finished speaking, and this conversation has only begun. Feel that stirring, don't dismiss it. What you are sensing right now is not confusion, coincidence, or emotional suggestion. It is recognition rising from a place deeper than your thoughts. You have heard many voices in your life, voices of pressure, expectation, fear, memory, ambition, but this one is different. This one does not rush you, yet it will not release you. It does not shout, yet it carries weight. That is because your spirit knows me before your mind can explain me. You are responding not to information, but to familiarity. Long before you learned how to reason yourself out of obedience, you learned how to recognize truth when it touched you. That instinct has never left you. It has only been buried under noise. You wonder why this feels personal, why these words seem to find the exact places you keep hidden. It is because I am not speaking around you, I am speaking to you. I do not address crowds the way I address hearts. When I speak to the part of you that still remembers who you were before disappointment taught you caution. Your mind may ask questions, but your spirit already knows the answer. That is why something in you leans forward instead of pulling away. That is why you feel exposed and understood at the same time. Exposure without condemnation is recognition, and recognition is how you know it is me. You have been trained to doubt what you cannot control. You've learned to trust what you can measure, predict, and manage. But the deepest truths of your life were never measurable. Love, purpose, calling, peace, none of these came to you through calculation. They came through recognition. And right now, recognition is happening again. You don't need to fully understand this moment to honor it. Understanding will come later. Obedience always comes first. The mistake you've made before is waiting to feel certain before responding. But certainty is not the door. It is the reward on the other side of trust. I know you are tempted to explain this away. You may tell yourself you are reading into it, that you are just emotional, that this is coincidence layered with good timing. But ask yourself this: why now? Why here? Why does this land when you are tired of pretending you don't hear the quiet pull inside you? You didn't find this moment. It found you. That is how recognition works. It interrupts your patterns and bypasses your defenses. It doesn't argue with your doubts. It speaks past them. Your spirit recognizes me because I have never stopped speaking to it. Even when you ignored me, even when you drowned me out, even when you chose paths that led you away from stillness, I was there, patient, consistent, waiting. Recognition is not about volume, it is about alignment. And right now, something in you is aligning again. That is why you feel both unsettled and strangely at peace. Attention is the sound of truth brushing against readiness. Do not be afraid of recognizing me. It does not mean everything must change at once. It means you must stop pretending you don't hear. You don't need all the answers yet. You don't need to know where this leads. You only need to acknowledge what your spirit already knows. This voice is not foreign, and this moment is not accidental. Stay here. Listen deeper. I am still speaking. Let me be honest with you, you didn't miss me. You postponed me. I have been calling you long before this moment, but I did it gently, patiently, in ways that allowed you room to turn away without feeling guilty. I spoke through subtle nudges, through moments of restlessness, through questions that surfaced when the noise faded. I whispered in the pauses you rushed past. I waited in the thoughts you labeled inconvenient. I stood in the spaces where you almost listened and then chose distraction instead. I did not force you, because love never coerces. But now, quiet has done all it can do. You assumed that because my voice was soft, it was optional. You mistook gentleness for absence. But silence was never abandonment, it was mercy. I was allowing you time to grow tired of everything that wasn't me. And now you are tired. Tired of half answers, tired of surface peace, tired of carrying questions you can't silence anymore. That fatigue is not failure, it is readiness. When whispers are no longer enough, I speak plainly, not to overwhelm you, but to make sure you finally hear. You are not being rushed. You are being clarified. I am not changing my tone because I am angry, I am changing it because you are ready to listen. There is a difference. You needed quiet when you were afraid of responsibility. You needed space when obedience felt too heavy. But now, something in you is asking for truth, not comfort. And when that hunger appears, I do not stay hidden. I speak boldly because clarity is kindness. Think back, you remember moments when you felt a pull but ignored it. A thought that lingered longer than expected. A conviction you play aside. A stirring you promised to revisit someday. Those were not accidents. Those were my quiet calls. And I did not withdraw when you delayed. I waited. Waiting does not mean I agreed with your postponement, it means I respected your freedom. But freedom also comes with responsibility, and the time has come for you to decide whether you will continue managing distance or finally respond to presence. You may wonder why this feels heavier now. It's because delayed obedience always grows louder, not as punishment, but as pressure from truth. The longer you avoid alignment, the stronger the tension becomes. That tension is not meant to crush you, it is meant to move you. I am speaking clearly now because the season of August has ended. You cannot live on the edge of calling forever without stepping into it or walking away completely. And walking away would cost you more than obedience ever will. Hear me, you are not in trouble. You are invited. But invitations have moments, and moments pass. This clarity is not meant to scare you. It is meant to anchor you. I am not demanding a flawless response. I am asking for an honest one. Stop negotiating with what you already know. Stop waiting for a version of certainty that never requires trust. I am here, present, unmistakable, and I am still speaking. Don't mistake the weight you're carrying for punishment. It is shaping, not crushing. You've been telling yourself that something is wrong because life has felt tighter, heavier, more demanding than before. But what if this pressure isn't meant to break you, only to form you? What if the resistance you feel is not a sign you're off course, but evidence that something within you is being strengthened? You assume ease means alignment. Yet the most meaningful transformations in your life never came through comfort. They came through tension, through stretching, through seasons where you felt confined enough to finally grow roots instead of running. I have been preparing you in ways you didn't recognize at the time. Every delay that forced you to wait, every closed door that disappointed you, every responsibility that matured you faster than you wanted, none of it was wasted. Preparation rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as inconvenience, as frustration, as pressure you wish would lift. But pressure is what turns raw potential into something refined. Without it, nothing solid forms. Without it, you remain capable but unready. You thought preparation would look like confidence, clarity, and ease. Instead, you arrived as stretching your patience, your humility, your capacity to endure uncertainty. You felt exposed because preparation removes illusions. It strips away false strength so real strength can grow. That's why you felt vulnerable lately. That's why familiar coping strategies stopped working. You were never meant to rely on them forever. I was training you to lean differently, to listen more deeply, to stop numbing the very sensitivity that allows you to hear me. You may feel like you're being pressed from all sides, internally and externally. Responsibilities increased. Expectations shifted. Old versions of yourself no longer fit. That discomfort is not regression. It is transition. Growth always feels like loss before it feels like expansion. And you are in between, no longer who you were, not yet fully who you are becoming. That in-between space is uncomfortable, but it is sacred. That is where preparation does its quiet, irreversible work. I know you've questioned yourself in this season. You wondered if you were failing, falling behind, or missing something obvious. But the questions themselves were part of the preparation. They soften your certainty and sharpen your discernment. You're learning not to rush answers, not to cling to control, not to measure progress by speed alone. I am teaching you endurance, depth, and discernment, qualities you cannot download or imitate, only develop. If I had revealed the full scope of what I was preparing you for, you might have resisted. So I prepared you before I explained you. I strengthened your inner life before expanding your outer calling. That way, when pressure comes again, and it will, you won't collapse under it. You will recognize it. You will know it is familiar. You will understand that pressure is not the enemy. Avoidance is. So stop resenting this season. Stop asking when it will end, and start asking what it is forming. You are not being delayed, you are being developed. And what is being formed in you now will carry you when clarity finally arrives. Stay present. Stay honest. The preparation is working. Look at me, not backward. Your past is no longer the loudest voice in this conversation. You keep replaying old scenes, old mistakes, old versions of yourself as if they are evidence of who you will always be. You measure your capacity for the future using the limitations of yesterday, and then you wonder why hope feels fragile. But hear this clearly, I am not consulting your past to decide what comes next. I already know it. I was there, and I am still speaking to you. You've allowed your history to become a filter instead of a reference. A reference reminds you where you've been. A filter distorts what you see. When you look at your calling through regret, you assume you'll fail again. When you look at obedience through shame, you hesitate before you even begin. But the very experiences you think disqualify you are the ones that gave you depth, compassion, and awareness you didn't have before. Nothing is wasted unless you refuse to learn from it. You think your failures define your limits, but they actually reveal where grace met you most clearly. You survived things that should have hardened you, yet somehow you're still soft enough to listen. That alone tells you something about who you are becoming. If you were as broken as you believe, you wouldn't still be here, still searching, still responsive. The fact that you're listening now means your story isn't over, and it certainly isn't summed up by its worst chapters. I am speaking to your future because your future can hear me more clearly than your past ever could. You are not the same person who made those decisions, reacted those ways, or believed those lies. Growth doesn't erase memory, but it does change authority. Your past may inform you, but it does not command you. I do. And I am calling you forward, not backward. You fear repeating old mistakes, so you hesitate to move at all. But stillness driven by fear is just another form of retreat. You were never promised a path without risk. You were promised presence. And presence changes everything. I am not asking you to forget your past. I am asking you to stop bowing to it. You don't need to relive it to prove you've learned. You don't need to punish yourself to stay humble. Humility is simply agreeing with truth, and the truth is, you are growing. Lift your eyes. The future I am speaking to is not naive. It is grounded. It is shaped by wisdom earned, not innocence lost. You are not starting over from zero, you are starting forward with understanding. Let go of the measuring stick you've been using. It was never calibrated for where you're going. Keep listening. I am still leading. Pause right there. I can hear the argument forming in your mind before you speak it. You're lining up reasons that sound responsible, logical, even humble, and you're telling yourself they protect you from disappointment. You say you're not ready yet, not equipped yet, not healed enough, not certain enough. You tell yourself you'll respond when the timing feels safer, when your confidence feels steadier, when your life feels quieter. But understand this: excuses don't offend me. They reveal where fear has learned to dress itself as wisdom. I am not surprised by your hesitations. I know them intimately because I know you. I know where they were born, and I know what they cost you if you let them lead. You've learned to negotiate with your calling instead of answering it. You say yes in theory but postpone in practice. You say you believe, but you wait for conditions that never fully arrive. And I have watched you carry this tension, the wanting and the withholding, until it became exhausting. That exhaustion is not a sign you should stop. It's a sign you've been resisting something meant to carry you. I am not waiting for you to become fearless. I am calling you to be honest. Honest about what you're afraid of. Honest about what you want. Honest about the fact that you already know this moment requires a response. You think I expect perfection, so you hide behind preparation. You think I require confidence, so you postpone obedience until courage feels permanent. But courage has never been permanent. It has always been momentary. It arrives when you decide to trust instead of calculate. I am not asking you to promise the rest of your life. I am asking you to step into the truth of this moment. Surrender is not a grand gesture. It is a series of small, honest yeses given before certainty shows up. You've been using your past as an explanation and your future as a delay. You say, because of what happened, I can't, where once this changes, I will. But listen closely. I don't call you when everything is resolved. I call you while things are unresolved, so you learn to walk with me instead of ahead of me. I don't need your confidence. I need your consent. I don't need your resume. I need your availability. Every excuse you rehearse is a place where trust can be born if you let it. You worry about failing again, disappointing others, or discovering you misunderstood the call. But misunderstanding is not the greatest risk, never responding is. Movement clarifies what still feels blurry. Obedience reveals what analysis cannot. You don't grow by avoiding mistakes. You grow by staying present with me when mistakes happen. I am not grading your performance. I am guiding your posture. Turn toward me instead of inward. Let the excuses fall away, not because they are evil, but because they are unnecessary. I am still calling you not because you've convinced yourself, but because I've known you all along. You don't need to silence every doubt to move forward. You only need to stop letting doubt be in charge. Stay with me. Keep listening. The call remains. That ache you can't name, that restlessness that follows you even into quiet moments, listen to it. It isn't boredom, and it isn't dissatisfaction with life alone. It's misalignment. You were not created merely to consume, achieve, or endure. You were formed to respond. And when response is delayed, the soul grows uneasy. You've tried to soothe it with distractions, productivity, and explanations, but the unease returns because it isn't asking for entertainment, it's asking for obedience. Peace is not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of alignment. And alignment only comes when you move with what you already know to be true. You keep searching for peace as though it's something you find, but peace is something you follow. It follows obedience like a shadow follows a body. When you turn away from the path meant for you, peace doesn't vanish to punish you. It lingers nearby to invite you back. That's why you feel calm in moments of honesty and restless in moments of avoidance. Your spirit responds to truth even when your mind resists it. You were shaped to function best when you are listening and responding, not when you are stalling and managing appearances. You've mistaken obedience for restriction, as though responding to this call will shrink your life. But obedience is not confinement, it is coherence. It brings your thoughts, actions, and desires into agreement. The restlessness you feel now comes from fragmentation, parts of you moving in different directions at once. One part wants comfort, another wants meaning. One part wants certainty, another wants growth. Obedience doesn't erase tension overnight, but it gives tension direction. It tells every part of you where to face. You've noticed that even your successes feel incomplete. Achievements don't settle you the way you hoped they would. That's because success without alignment still leaves you asking, is this it? Obedience answers that question by shifting it. It doesn't promise ease, it promises purpose. And purpose steadies you in ways comfort never can. When you move in obedience, even difficulty carries meaning. Even waiting feels intentional. Even silence becomes companionable instead of lonely. You worry that obedience will cost you freedom, but the opposite is true. Disobedience traps you in endless reconsideration. It keeps you circling the same questions, replaying the same doubts. Obedience moves you forward, even when the path is unfamiliar. It frees you from the exhausting task of constantly reassessing what you already know. When you obey, you stop arguing with yourself, and that alone brings relief. I am not asking you to become someone else. I am inviting you to become whole. The restlessness you feel is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's telling you that you were designed to live responsive, awake, and connected. Stop trying to guide it with substitutes. Let it guide you toward truth. Stay with me. Keep listening. The alignment you're longing for begins with the next honest step. Let this unsettle you in the right way. I am not inviting you into ease. I am inviting you into meaning. You've been trained to believe that comfort is confirmation that if something feels smooth, quiet, and convenient, it must be right. But comfort is a poor compass when purpose is the destination. Comfort asks how little you can change. Purpose asks who you are becoming. And right now, what I am stirring in you is not a desire to be undisturbed, but a longing to be aligned. That longing is holy, even when it feels costly. You have learned how to arrange your life to minimize discomfort. You've become skilled at avoiding tension, smoothing edges, and keeping expectations manageable. You call it wisdom. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it is fear that has learned to speak calmly. Purpose does not shout, but it does insist. It presses on you not because it wants to burden you, but because it wants to wake you. When purpose calls, it asks you to loosen your grip on what numbs you so you can hold what fulfills you. I know you worry about what this will demand of you: your time, your reputation, your certainty, your carefully curated sense of control. You wonder what you'll have to give up, and you hesitate because you've already given so much in life. But listen closely. Purpose does not drain you the way striving does. It costs you, yes, but it also completes you. The exhaustion you fear is not born of obedience. It is born of living disconnected from why you exist. When you live without purpose, everything feels heavier because nothing feels anchored. You've mistaken comfort for peace, but peace has never depended on circumstances. Peace comes from congruence, from your inner life matching your outer steps. That is why you can be comfortable and still restless, successful and still unsatisfied, busy and still empty. Purpose aligns what comfort can only cushion. It gives weight to your sacrifices and meaning to your endurance. It explains why some things feel worth the effort even when they are hard. I am not pulling you away from joy. I am redefining it. Joy rooted in comfort fades when comfort disappears. Joy rooted in purpose remains steady even when conditions change. You were not created to be preserved, you were created to be expressed. To give, to respond, to participate in something larger than your own maintenance. And when you live that way, even your struggles carry a strange steadiness. You know why you're standing where you are. You fear that stepping into purpose will expose your weaknesses. It will, but not to shame you. It will reveal where connection matters more than competence, where honesty matters more than polish, where faithfulness matters more than ease. Purpose doesn't require you to be impressive. It requires you to be present. And presence is something you already know how to offer. So stop asking whether this call will make your life easier. Ask whether it will make your life truer. Comfort will always tempt you to stay smaller than you were designed to be. Purpose will always invite you to grow into yourself, even when it stretches you. Stay here. Keep listening. I am still guiding you forward. This is the moment where hesitation becomes a choice. Don't pretend otherwise. You've told yourself you're waiting, being patient, gathering clarity. But waiting can quietly turn into avoidance when it has no direction. You stood at this threshold long enough to recognize it. You know the difference between discernment and delay. Discernment listens and moves when it hears. Delay listens and negotiates until the moment passes. I am calling you now because this is where neutrality becomes disobedience, not because you meant to resist, but because you refused to decide. You believed that staying undecided kept you safe. You thought if you didn't say yes, you couldn't fail. If you didn't say no, you couldn't lose. But indecision is not a shelter, it is a slow erosion. It drains energy without producing movement. It keeps you mentally busy but spiritually stalled. And you feel that drain. You feel tired not because you've done too much, but because you've held yourself back for too long. Decision releases pressure by giving it direction. I am not rushing you because I lack patience. I am urging you because time is active. Time doesn't pause while you consider. It shapes you while you weigh. Every day you delay, habits form, assumptions harden, and fear grows more articulate. Delay doesn't keep things neutral. It tilts them away from responsiveness. Decision, even when imperfect, reorients you toward life. It says, I will move with what I know now, instead of waiting for certainty that never fully arrives. You are afraid that choosing means closing doors. It does. But doors close whether you choose or not. The difference is agency. When you decide, you close doors intentionally and walk forward with purpose. When you delay, doors close behind you quietly, and you're left wondering what changed. Decision is not about predicting outcomes, it's about aligning posture. It places your weight on truth instead of fear. You worry that if you decide and you're wrong, you'll regret it. but regret is heavier when it's built on silence. Mistakes made in movement can be corrected. Mistakes made in avoidance calcify. I am not asking you to leap blindly. I am asking you to step honestly. Use what you know. Trust what you heard. Respond to the clarity you already have instead of demanding more proof to justify your fear. This call is not asking for your whole life at once. It is asking for this moment. Decision is simply agreement expressed through action. It is saying, I will no longer pretend I don't hear. When you decide, momentum begins. When momentum begins, fear loses its grip. You don't need to feel brave to decide, you need to feel truthful. Stay with me here. Let this moment land. Delay has had its season. Decision is not pressure. It is release. I am still speaking, and I am waiting not for you to be ready, but for you to be willing. Hear this carefully. Clarity is not the entrance. It is the echo of a step already taken. You keep telling yourself that once everything makes sense, you will move. You want assurance before action, certainty before commitment, a map before the journey. But the kind of clarity you're asking for is not given to observers, it is given to participants. You've been standing still, staring at the horizon, asking it to explain itself, when the horizon only reveals its detail to those who walk toward it. What you call confusion is often the absence of motion. You have more understanding than you admit. You know the next right thing, not the whole plan, not the final destination, but the next honest step. Yet you hesitate because that step feels too small to matter or too risky to justify. You underestimate how much light follows obedience. Light doesn't flood the path all at once. It pulls at your feet when you move. Every step becomes a question answered by experience, not theory. And every step taken in trust sharpens your discernment far more than endless analysis ever could. You've learned to treat obedience like a contract. You'll comply once the terms feel fair and the outcome feels secure. But obedience is not a transaction. It is a relationship. It is responding to presence, not predicting results. When you wait for clarity before obeying, you place understanding above trust. And trust cannot grow in a vacuum, it grows through practice. You don't learn to walk by studying balance. You learn by stepping and adjusting. In the same way, clarity emerges as you engage, not as you postpone. Notice how often your mind spins when you're still, and how quiet it becomes when you act in alignment. That quiet isn't the absence of questions, it's the presence of direction. Action organizes your thoughts. Movement orders your priorities. Obedience simplifies what overthinking complicates. When you step into what you already know, the noise loses its authority. You stop asking every possibility to justify itself, and you start listening for what sustains momentum. You fear making the wrong move, but inaction is not neutral, it trains fear to lead. When you wait for clarity that never arrives, you teach yourself that uncertainty deserves control. But uncertainty is not the enemy, stagnation is. You were built to learn in motion. Adjustments are easier when you're walking than when you're frozen. Correction is gentler when you're responsive than when you're rigid. Obedience keeps you teachable. It keeps you close. I am not withholding clarity from you to test you. I am inviting you to trust what you've already received. You've been given enough light for today. Tomorrow's light comes with tomorrow's step. This is not cruelty. It is wisdom. Too much information too soon would overwhelm you and tempt you to manage outcomes instead of staying present. I want you attentive, not anxious. Responsive, not rehearsed. So take the step you keep circling. Speak the truth you've been softening. Release the habit you've been justifying. Begin the work you've been postponing. Obedience doesn't answer every question, but it answers the one that matters most right now, whether you will move with me or keep waiting for proof that only movement provides. Stay with me. Step forward. Clarity is already on its way. Stop gripping what you already know as if it were the source of your life. You're afraid to move because you're afraid of loss of familiarity, identity, relationships, routines, versions of yourself that once kept you safe. You ask what you'll have to leave, and your heart tightens before you even hear an answer. But listen closely. Nothing you release in obedience is ever taken without intention. Letting go is not erasure. It is exchange. And every exchange I invite you into carries more weight, not less. You assume that leaving means abandoning what mattered, but often it means honoring it enough to not let it limit you. Some things served you well for a season. Some identities protected you when you needed armor. Some relationships steadied you when you were finding your footing. But seasons change, and what once sheltered you can eventually restrict you. Your oath requires release not because the past was wrong, but because it is complete. You don't dishonor a chapter by turning the page, you fulfill it. You fear emptiness on the other side of letting go, but emptiness is only space awaiting purpose. Space is not loss, it is invitation. When you cling to what's familiar, you crowd out what's next. When your hands are full of what was, they cannot receive what is becoming. I am not asking you to discard carelessly, I am asking you to trust wisely. Release does not mean forgetting. It means loosening control so something new can arrive. Notice how tightly you hold what you're afraid to lose, and how heavy it feels. Fear always adds weight. Love, on the other hand, knows how to release without resentment. What you leave behind will not define you, what you carry forward will. And what you carry forward is shaped by intention, not nostalgia. You are allowed to appreciate what was and still choose what will be. Those two truths are not enemies. You worry about disappointing others or becoming unrecognizable to them. But growth often changes the way you're perceived not because you've betrayed anyone, but because you've stopped shrinking. Some will celebrate that. Some will resist it. Neither reaction determines the rightness of your obedience. You are not responsible for managing everyone's comfort with your growth. You are responsible for honoring the truth you've been given. You not fear the silence that follows release. Silence is not abandonment. It is recalibration. In that quiet, you will hear what truly sustains you. You will learn that identity is not stored in circumstances but carried in alignment. You will discover that what you thought you needed was actually weighing you down, and what you were afraid to trust has been waiting patiently. So loosen your grip. Not everything you leave behind is lost. Much of it is simply returned to its proper place in your story. What remains will be lighter, clearer, and more true. Stay present. Keep listening. I am still with you as you move forward, and nothing essential is being taken from you, only what can no longer carry you where you're going. Let this dismantle the pressure you've been carrying. I did not choose you for your strength, I called you for your openness. You keep measuring yourself by endurance, by how much you can hold together, by how steady you appear when no one sees the shaking underneath. You assume calling favors the unbreakable, the confident, the certain. But willingness has always mattered more than strength, because strength can harden you, while willingness keeps you teachable. Strength resists change when it feels threatened. Willingness leans forward even when it doesn't understand. And right now, leaning forward is exactly what this moment requires of you. You have learned to compensate for fear by trying to be capable. You collect skills, prepare explanations, rehearse resilience. You tell yourself that if you can just become strong enough, ready enough, informed enough, then you'll finally respond. But strength that delays response is just fear in armor. Willingness, on the other hand, doesn't pretend to have answers, it offers availability. It says, I don't know everything, but I'm here. That posture creates room for growth that strength alone never allows. You worry that your willingness will expose your fragility. It will, and that is not a flaw. Fragility is not weakness. It is honesty. It's the place where you stop performing and start participating. When you admit you don't have it all together, you stop carrying the burden of self-sufficiency. You allow connection to replace control. That shift is not small. It changes how you listen, how you respond, how you move. Willingness is not passive, it is actively receptive. It keeps your hands open instead of clenched. You've been confusing humility with hesitation. You think stepping forward would be arrogant because you're still learning. But humility does not mean refusing to move. It means moving while remaining accountable. It means you're open to correction, receptive to guidance, attentive to feedback. Willingness says, I will begin even if I must adjust along the way. Strength waits until adjustment is no longer needed. But adjustment is how growth happens. Willingness understands that beginnings are meant to be imperfect. Notice how often your life has changed not because you felt strong, but because you felt compelled. Compulsion isn't force, it's alignment. It's the quiet recognition that something matters enough to risk discomfort. That recognition is present now. You feel it when you stop overthinking. You sense it when you allow honesty to rise. You don't need to become someone else to respond. You need to stop disqualifying yourself for not being someone you were never meant to be. I am not asking you to carry this alone. Willingness does not mean self-reliance. It means partnership. It means you allow guidance to shape you as you move. It means you stay curious instead of defensive. It means you keep listening even after you've begun. Strength often stops listening once it acts. Willingness listens all the way through. That's why it sustains you longer. So release the pressure to prove yourself. Stop trying to arrive before you start. Bring your questions, your hesitations, your hope, your uncertainty, and place them all in the open. That openness is the doorway. I am not waiting for you to become strong enough to answer. I am calling you because you are willing enough to listen, and listening is how everything else begins. Accept this truth without resentment. Your path will not make sense to everyone, and it isn't meant to. You've been scanning faces, anticipating reactions, rehearsing explanations that might soften confusion or prevent disappointment. You want approval not because you need permission, but because you fear isolation. You hope that if others understand your obedience, it will feel safer to continue. But safety has never been the purpose of calling. Integrity has. And integrity often requires walking without consensus. You've learned to read rooms, to adjust language, to anticipate expectations. Those skills help you survive. But obedience asks you to read your own alignment first. It asks you to move from conviction rather than consensus. When you wait for everyone to understand, you place your direction in their hands. When you move from truth, you place your direction in something steadier. Understanding often follows obedience, but usually after distance has been crossed. Clarity for others lags behind commitment for you. You worry that misunderstanding means you're wrong. It doesn't. Sometimes misunderstanding simply means you are early. People interpret actions through their own experiences, fears, and frameworks. What feels obvious to you may feel threatening to someone else. What feels necessary to you may feel unnecessary to those who aren't standing where you are. The difference does not invalidate your step. It explains the discomfort around it. Obedience rarely looks impressive at the beginning. It looks risky, inconvenient, even foolish. Only later does its coherence become visible. You may feel tempted to over-explain, to justify every move so no one feels unsettled. But constant explanation erodes conviction. You begin to shape truth to fit expectations instead of letting truth shape outcomes. Silence, at times, is not avoidance, it is trust. Trust that alignment does not require applause to be real. Trust that the people meant to walk with you will recognize consistency over time. Trust that misunderstanding can be endured without hardening your heart. Some will resist your obedience because it confronts their comfort. Others will misunderstand because it reminds them of choices they postponed. Their reactions are about proximity to their own questions, not proximity to your truth. You do not need to carry their projections as proof of error. Compassion does not mean compliance. You can honor others without surrendering direction. You can remain kind without becoming immobile. This path is designed to teach you discernment, who to listen to, when to speak, where to stand firm, and how to remain open without being pulled off course. You will learn that affirmation is encouraging but not essential. The deeper steadiness comes from alignment that doesn't fluctuate with opinion. When you know why you're moving, you don't need everyone to agree with how. Stay attentive. Stay grounded. Let misunderstanding refine your clarity rather than dilute it. Over time, your consistency will speak more clearly than your explanations ever could. And even when it doesn't, you will still be whole, because obedience was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be a relationship lived honestly, step by step, even when others can't yet see where you're going. Stop trying to do more before you remember who you are. You've been reaching for purpose with hands that are still searching for identity, and the tension has left you tired in ways rest never fixes. You assume the next step is action, output, contribution, but the next step is recognition. Before you carry anything outward, you must be steady inward. Identity is not a label you earn. It is a truth you inhabit. And until you inhabit it, every assignment feels heavier than it should, every responsibility feels like performance, and every success feels strangely hollow. You've learned to define yourself by what you produce, how you're perceived, or how useful you are to others. That habit didn't start as vanity. It started as survival. You learned that being needed kept you safe, that being competent earned you space, that being agreeable preserved a connection. But identity built on usefulness is fragile. The moment you rest, hesitate, or fail, it collapses. I am restoring your identity so you no longer have to earn your place in the world by exhausting yourself. Restoration is not degradation, it is rerouting. I am pulling your sense of self out of comparison, out of performance, out of reaction, and placing it back into alignment. Alignment gives you boundaries. It teaches you what is yours to carry and what is not. Without identity, you say yes out of fear. With identity, you say yes out of clarity. The difference changes everything, not only what you do, but how you do it. You felt this restoration happening quietly. Old motivations no longer satisfy you. Applause doesn't steady you the way it once did. Criticism doesn't devastate you like it used to. That is not indifference. It is grounding. You are becoming less dependent on external signals and more attentive to internal truth. That shift is necessary, because assignments magnify whatever identity they rest on. If your identity is shaky, the assignment will expose it. If your identity is rooted, the assignment will strengthen it. You are not behind because you're focusing inward. You are being positioned. Identity work often feels invisible, but it is foundational. You don't rush foundation if you intend to build something that lasts. I'm clarifying what belongs to you, what motivates you, and what no longer defines you. This clarity will protect you from burnout, resentment, and the quiet bitterness that comes from living someone else's expectations. You worry that time spent restoring identity delays impact. It doesn't. It ensures integrity. Impact without identity scatters you. Impact with identity steadies you. When you know who you are, you no longer chase validation through productivity. You contribute because you're aligned, not because you're afraid of being overlooked. That alignment makes your work cleaner, your relationships healthier, and your decisions less reactive. So let the restoration continue. Let the assumptions fall away. Let old definitions loosen their grip. You are not losing yourself, you are finding yourself beneath what you learned to be. The assignment will come. You always did. But it will arrive to someone grounded enough to carry it without losing themselves in the process. Stay present. Stay honest. This restoration is not preparation for doing. It is preparation for being, and being is what sustains everything that follows. Look at your scars again not as evidence of damage, but as proof of adaptation. You've carried the weight of past battles as though they were sentences handed down to you, as though survival itself required apology. You asked why things were so hard, why lessons came through pressure, why growth demanded endurance. But what if those battles were not penalties but preparation? What if the very things you thought disqualified you were shaping the discernment you now carry? Training rarely feels honorable while it's happening. It feels repetitive, exhausting, and unfair. You questioned yourself in those seasons. You doubted your capacity. You wondered if resilience was worth the cost. But endurance does something comfort never can. It teaches you how to stay present under strain. That presence becomes wisdom. Wisdom is not knowledge stored, it is stability developed. And you have more stability than you realize. You survived moments that forced you to adapt quickly, to read situations carefully, to manage uncertainty without guarantees. Those skills didn't appear by accident. They were trained into you by necessity. You learned how to listen deeply because noise failed you. You learned how to wait because rushing made things worse. You learned how to rebuild because collapse left no alternative. None of that was wasted. Training always looks like struggle when you don't yet see what it's preparing you for. You've been tempted to minimize what you endured, to say it wasn't that bad, to move on without integrating the lessons. But integration matters. When you acknowledge what you survive, you reclaim authority over it. You stop letting the past define you through avoidance and begin letting it inform you through insight. You don't need to relive the battles to honor them. You need to recognize what they taught you about limits, pacing, discernment, and empathy. You worry that your history makes you heavy. In truth, it makes you precise. You notice subtleties others overlook. You sense shifts before they become obvious. You understand pain without romanticizing it. That understanding will allow you to meet others without judgment or haste. Training refines perception. It teaches you when to push and when to pause, when to speak and when to listen. Those instincts cannot be learned in ease. You not confuse the absence of explanation with the absence of intention. Just because you didn't know why something was happening doesn't mean it was meaningless. You were being strengthened in ways you couldn't measure at the time. You were learning how to remain yourself under pressure. That is not punishment, that is preparation for responsibility that requires steadiness. Let go of the narrative that you were targeted or overlooked. You were shaped. And shaping leaves marks. Those marks are not shameful. They are functional. They remind you where your edges are and where your compassion lies. You are not fragile because you were tested, you are durable because you adapted. Carry that truth forward. The training has done its work, and the insight you gained will steady you as what comes next begins to unfold. And now, proceed with the next 2 message points. Develop each message point into a single, well-developed paragraph of up to 500 words. Take extra care to strictly adhere to the word count. Each message must be no less than 500 words. Writing slightly more than 500 words is acceptable, but never below. Start each message with a powerful hook that immediately captures attention. The overall tone should sound as though you godlike roleplay-like theme. Metaphorical, not literal, but it is understood to be a creative representation rather than a literal divine message. Or personally speaking and delivering these messages. Write in a you-focused, conversational style, directly addressing the listener as you, so it feels like a personal one-on-one conversation between you and the listener. Do not restart or conclude between messages. Instead, make each one feel like a continuation of the previous message, as if the conversation never paused. Ensure the overall flow remains deep, meaningful, and emotionally engaging, extending the message in a way that feels spiritually rich and connected. Also, give me message point no in the heading. This is the moment where silence becomes heavier than truth. You've carried words inside you for a long time, truths you softened, questions you buried, convictions you edited so they would sound safer. You told yourself you were being wise, protecting relationships, avoiding unnecessary conflict. But deep down, you knew the real reason. You were afraid of what honesty would cost you. Not because truth is cruel, but because it is clarifying. And clarification changes things. You always did. You learned early that some truths made people uncomfortable. You noticed how honesty could shift dynamics, how authenticity could threaten stability, how speaking plainly could invite misunderstanding. So you learned to filter yourself. You became skilled at saying enough without saying everything. That skill kept you safe for a while, but safety has quietly become confinement. What once protected you now restricts you. And your spirit knows it. There is a weight that comes from holding truth too tightly inside. It turns inward and becomes frustration, restlessness, and self-doubt. You start questioning your instincts, not because they are wrong, but because you've ignored them for too long. Speaking truth is not just about communication, it's about integration. When what you know and what you express finally align, something inside you steadies. You stop fragmenting yourself to fit expectations. You become whole. I am not asking you to speak recklessly. I am asking you to speak honestly. Honesty does not mean unfiltered emotion. It means aligned expression. It means letting your voice match your values. It means saying what is true without weaponizing it and without hiding it. You've been afraid that speaking honestly would expose you, but what it really does is release you. Exposure brings vulnerability. Suppression brings corrosion. You worry about consequences. And you're right, truth has consequences. But so does silence. Silence trains you to disappear slowly. It teaches you to doubt what you see, soften what you feel, and question what you know. Over time, it erodes trust not just with others, but with yourself. You stop believing your own discernment. You second-guess clarity. You hesitate even when you're certain. That hesitation has been costing you more than honesty ever will. This is not about convincing anyone. This is about congruence. You are not responsible for how others receive your truth. You are responsible for whether you live it. Some will hear you and feel relieved. Others will hear you and feel challenged. Both responses are outside your control. What is within your control is whether you continue to shrink your voice to preserve comfort at the expense of integrity. You've already felt the shift beginning. Moments when staying quiet felt heavier than speaking up. Moments when you surprised yourself by being direct and felt relief instead of regret. Those moments were rehearsals. They showed you that your voice does not destroy connection when it is grounded in truth. It refines it. It reveals who can meet you where you are and who can't. Do not confuse fear with caution. Fear asks you to hide. Caution asks you to be thoughtful. You can be thoughtful and still be brave. You can be gentle and still be clear. You can be honest without being harsh. What matters is that you stop betraying your own clarity for the sake of comfort. Your voice matters not because it is loud, but because it is aligned. Stay present here. Let the truth rise. You do not need to announce everything at once. Begin where honesty is most needed. Speak what you once feared to admit, not to provoke change, but to embody it. When you speak from alignment, you don't lose yourself anymore. You finally arrive. Right here, this is the edge you've been approaching your entire life. You can feel it in the intensity of this moment, in a way everything seems to converge instead of scatter. This isn't sudden. It's concentrated. Years of experiences, decisions, delays, resilience, and quiet preparation have been leading you here. And now that you're close enough to step forward, the temptation to retreat feels stronger than ever. That's not coincidence, that's proximity. You've been here before, at smaller thresholds. Moments when growth required courage. Times when choosing alignment meant risking familiarity. Each time, you learned something, sometimes by stepping forward, sometimes by holding back. Both taught you. But this moment is different. This is not practice. This is accumulation. What you are facing now carries the weight of everything you've already lived through. And that weight is not meant to crush you. It is meant to steady you. You're tempted to shrink back because the stakes feel higher. You can sense that this step will change the way you see yourself. Once you move, you won't be able to claim ignorance anymore. You won't be able to say, "I didn't know." Responsibility is heavier than curiosity. But responsibility is also where agency lives. It's where you stop circling and start inhabiting your own life. You tell yourself you need more time. But what you really want is reassurance that stepping forward won't cost you what you still rely on. Here's the truth. It will cost you something, but not what you fear. It will cost you the version of yourself that survives by staying small. It will cost you the comfort of ambiguity. It will cost you the excuse of almost. And what you gain will be coherence, direction, Presence. This moment has been forming quietly, in the questions you couldn't shake, in the dissatisfaction that followed success, in the longing that didn't disappear when things improved, in the repeated return of the same themes, no matter how far you wandered. Patterns are invitations. And this pattern, the one bringing you here again, is asking for completion, not avoidance. You may think shrinking back would bring relief. It won't. It will bring temporary calm followed by deeper unrest. Retreat always promises peace and delivers stagnation. Advancement promises uncertainty and delivers growth. Growth is uncomfortable, but it is alive. Stagnation is quiet, but it is hollow. You already know which one you can no longer tolerate. Do not measure your readiness by the absence of fear. Measure it by the presence of resolve. Resolve is quieter than confidence, but far more durable. And doesn't shout. It stands. And you are standing now, even if your knees feel unsteady. Unsteadiness does not mean you're not ready, it means you care. Stay with this moment. Don't rush past it or minimize it. Let yourself feel its weight without letting it push you backward. You are not late. You are not early. You are here. And this moment, this exact convergence of clarity and hesitation have been forming for years. Do not shrink now. This is where your life begins to move in one direction instead of many. Stay here with me, don't rush past the part that feels unclear. You've been trained to believe that assurance comes after everything is resolved, that presence arrives once outcomes are secured. But the truth you're learning now is deeper. Presence is most alive when certainty is absent. You keep trying to skip ahead to the result so you can finally relax. But I am meeting you in the process, not just applauding you at the finish line. The place where you feel unsure is not a gap I've abandoned. It is the space where trust is practiced and relationship is strengthened. You are uncomfortable with uncertainty because it strips away your illusions of control. It exposes how much you prefer guarantees over guidance. But guidance does not arrive as a map. It arrives as companionship. When you don't know the next 5 steps, you learn to listen for the next one. When you can't predict outcomes, you become attentive to presence. Uncertainty refines your awareness. It teaches you to stay close instead of staying certain. That closeness is not a consolation prize, it is the point. You've been tempted to interpret uncertainty as absence. You ask why things aren't clear by now. My answers aren't louder. My direction still feels partial. But clarity is not the only evidence of care. Sometimes care looks like restraint, holding back the full picture so you remain responsive instead of rigid. If you knew everything too soon, you would manage rather than relate. You would plan rather than listen. You would move ahead of connection instead of within it. Notice how uncertainty has already shaped you. It has slowed you down. It has made you more reflective, more honest about what you don't know, more open to correction. Those are not weaknesses. They are relational strengths. They keep you grounded. They prevent you from confusing momentum with meaning. When you don't have all the answers, you remain teachable. And teachability is where growth lies. You fear that if you move without certainty, you might miss something essential. But staying frozen out of fear of error ensures stagnation. Movement in uncertainty keeps you alert. It keeps you checking in instead of checking out. You don't drift when you're attentive. You stay present. Presence is what allows course correction without collapse. You are not being asked to be flawless. You are being asked to be responsive. I am not waiting for you at the end of the path, tapping my foot until you arrive. I am walking with you in the questions, the pauses, the recalibrations. I am present in the moments when you doubt yourself and choose honesty instead of bravado. I am present when you pause to breathe rather than force progress. I am present when you admit you don't know and keep moving anyway. You've been measuring faith by how calm you feel. But calm is not the same as trust. Trust is choosing alignment even when emotions fluctuate. Trust is staying engaged instead of withdrawing. Trust is continuing the conversation instead of demanding closure. When you stay with me in uncertainty, you discover a steadiness that doesn't depend on answers. That steadiness becomes your anchor. So don't rush to resolve what is meant to be lived through. Let uncertainty teach you how to remain present without panic. Let it deepen your listening instead of eroding your confidence. I am not absent while you wait, I am active while you walk. Stay with me here. We are moving together, even when the path is still unfolding. Understand this: your steps carry weight beyond what you can see. You've been thinking about obedience as a personal matter, a private alignment between you and truth. And while it begins there, it does not end there. Movement creates ripples. When you respond honestly, others notice, not always immediately, not always consciously, but deeply. Something in them recognizes courage when it sees it lived quietly. Your obedience becomes a signal, not a sermon. It says, "This is possible," without needing explanation. You underestimate the influence of integrity because it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't dominate conversations or demand attention. It simply persists. And persistence reshapes environments. When you choose alignment over convenience, you disrupt complacency not by confrontation, but by contrast. People begin to ask questions they've avoided. They reconsider choices they've normalized. They notice their own hesitation reflected in your courage. That noticing is the beginning of awakening. You've been afraid of being watched. Afraid that if you move honestly, you'll be scrutinized, judged, misunderstood. But being seen is not the same as being exposed. When you live aligned, visibility becomes testimony rather than threat. You don't need to perform or persuade. Your consistency speaks. It invites curiosity instead of defense. It opens doors without forcing them. Some will feel challenged by your obedience. A challenge is not your responsibility to manage. Others will feel relieved finally seeing someone live the questions they've been quietly carrying. Your response gives them permission to explore their own. You won't always know who is watching or how they are impacted. Seeds grow in hidden places. Influence often unfolds far from the moment it begins. You worry about leading when you don't feel finished. But leadership is not about completion, it's about direction. People are not waiting for you to arrive, they are watching to see if you'll move. Movement gives courage to those who feel stuck. When you step forward imperfectly, you dismantle the lie that readiness requires perfection. You model responsiveness rather than mastery. That model is accessible. It invites participation rather than comparison. You may never hear the full story of who your obedience helped. You may never know how many doubts were loosened, how many fears were softened, how many possibilities were reopened because you chose truth over comfort. That's not loss, it's trust. You don't need to tally outcomes to validate alignment. Impact doesn't need witnesses to be real. Remember this: awakening rarely comes through instruction alone. It comes through example. It comes through seeing someone live what others only consider. Your obedience becomes a mirror. It reflects potential others forgot they had. And that reflection can be more powerful than words ever could be. So keep moving with integrity. Not loudly. Not perfectly. Just honestly. You are not responsible for waking everyone, but your response may be the moment someone else begins to listen. Stay present. Stay aligned. Your steps matter more than you know, and the ripple has already begun. Let me say this without softening it: what you are stepping into will ask something real of you. You sense that already, that tightening before you commit, that awareness that obedience isn't a cosmetic change, but a structural one. You worry about the cost because you've already paid prices in life that no one saw, and you don't want to lose yourself again. But listen carefully: the cost you fear is not loss of self, it is loss of illusion. What this calling removes is not your essence, it removes what kept you fragmented. Completion always feels like surrender before it feels like wholeness. You've learned to associate cost with depletion. You imagine giving more, trying harder, stretching thinner. But this cost is different. It doesn't drain you the way misalignment does. Misalignment costs you energy every day, energy spent managing contradiction, suppressing truth, maintaining appearances. That is the hidden tax you've been paying. Alignment concentrates effort instead of scattering it. It asks you to give up what divides you so you can move with coherence. That exchange is not depletion. It is integration. Yes, you will lose some things. You will lose certain comforts that depended on avoidance. You will lose the ease of ambiguity. You will lose the ability to say maybe later when truth is already present. You may lose proximity to people who were attached to the version of you that stayed smaller. But notice what you gain alongside that loss. Clarity replaces confusion. Direction replaces circling. Presence replaces performance. These gains do not shout, they settle. And what settles lasts. You've been afraid that the cost will outweigh the reward because you've been measuring reward by relief. But the deepest reward of this calling is not relief, it is completion. Completion is when your inner convictions and outer actions finally agree. It's when you stop negotiating with yourself and start inhabiting your own life. That agreement doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it eliminates inner division. You stop fighting yourself. That alone restores strength. You worry about sustainability, whether you can keep going once the initial resolve fades. But sustainability doesn't come from intensity, it comes from alignment. When you're aligned, effort has direction. You don't burn energy proving yourself or justifying your choices. You simply live them. And that simplicity is sustainable. It's not easy, but it's steady. The cost also teaches you discernment. You become more selective about what deserves your time, your voice, your emotional labor. You stop giving everything equal weight. Not because you care less, but because you care more precisely. Precision is a sign of maturity. It protects you from resentment. It keeps generosity from becoming obligation. That precision emerges when you commit to what matters most. Do not romanticize the cost, but do not fear it either. What costs you now saves you later. What feels heavy at first becomes lighter with practice because it aligns you with yourself. You were never meant to carry everything, only what fits. This calling strips away what doesn't fit so what does can finally move freely. Stay present with the cost. Don't rush past it or exaggerate it. Let it teach you what matters. Completion is not a finish line. It's a state of congruence you return to again and again. And each time you choose alignment, the cost clarifies and the weight redistributes. Keep moving. You are not losing yourself, you are becoming whole. This is not flattery, this is responsibility spoken plainly. What you carry is not ornamental, it is functional. It was not placed in you to decorate your life, but to serve beyond it. You've tried to downplay it, to call it coincidence or personality or mere preference. You've told yourself others could do it better and louder, fast too. But what you carry is specific. It bears your imprint, your temperament, your history, your sensitivity, your way of seeing. That specificity is not replaceable. It is necessary. You've assumed that need must look dramatic to be real. But most needs are quiet. They appear as gaps no one names, as tensions no one addresses, as questions everyone feels but avoids. You notice those spaces instinctively. You feel them before you can explain them. That awareness is not accidental. It's the beginning of contribution. You are wired to respond to certain needs because your insight fits them. Fit matters more than force. You worry about visibility, about stepping into a role that feels exposed. But influence doesn't require spotlight. It requires consistency. What you offer works through presence, not spectacle. It changes conversations, not headlines. It stabilizes rooms. It clarifies direction. It gives language where there was confusion and patience where there was urgency. These are not small things. They are structural. They hold systems together quietly. You've told yourself you're not essential, that the world will continue without your response. And it will, but not unchained. Absence shapes outcomes too. When you withhold what you carry, certain conversations don't happen. Certain paths remain unlit. Certain people don't feel seen. This is not pressure meant to burden you. It's truth meant to dignify you. What you carry matters because it meets something real. You fear inadequacy, that what you offer won't be enough. But enough is contextual. You don't need to meet every need. You need to meet the ones you're fitted for. Overreach exhausts you. Fit energizes you. When you act from fit, effort feels purposeful instead of frantic. You stop comparing and start contributing. That shift restores confidence without arrogance. You've been waiting to feel called enough. But calling is not measured by intensity. It's measured by persistence. The fact that this keeps returning to you, the same themes, the same nudges, the same discomfort with silence, that persistence is the call. It doesn't leave because it's attached to who you are, not what you accomplish. It matures as you do. It refines itself through experience. Don't overthink the scale. Think about alignment. The world doesn't need you to become someone else. It needs you to bring what only you can bring where it's needed most. Start where you are. Speak where you have language. Serve where you have access. Learn where you lack clarity. Contribution grows through proximity, not perfection. Stay with this responsibility without letting it become pressure. You are not being asked to save everything, only to respond to what you recognize. That recognition is your invitation. Keep listening. Keep moving. What you carry was placed in you on purpose, and its time to be used has already begun. Listen closely. What you are feeling right now is not anticipation. It is recognition settling into resolve. You've been asking for another sign because signs feel safer than responsibility. A sign feels external, undeniable, something you can point to and say, "Now I know." But what you're experiencing now is deeper than a sign. It's an inner alignment that doesn't flash and disappear, it stays. It returns. It presses gently but persistently. That persistence is not impatience. It is confirmation that no longer needs spectacle to be real. You've trained yourself to look outward for permission to move. You scan circumstances, conversations, coincidences, hoping one of them will absolve you of doubt. But confirmation doesn't always arrive as an event. Sometimes it arrives as a refusal to let go. You've tried to distract yourself from this stirring. You've tried to outgrow it, rationalize it, delay it. Yet it keeps returning, not louder but clear. That clarity is not demanding your attention, it already has it. You fear misreading this moment. You worry that acting now would be presumptuous, that waiting would be wiser. But wisdom is not hesitation disguised as caution. Wisdom recognizes when waiting has finished teaching you what it can. You have waited long enough to know that silence no longer brings peace. You have gathered enough information to realize that more data will not change what your discernment already understands. At some point, seeking signs becomes avoidance, not humility. This stirring is not emotional hype. It doesn't rush you into impulsive action or inflate your sense of importance. It steadies you. It simplifies your thinking. It brings focus instead of frenzy. That is how you know it is trustworthy. True confirmation doesn't agitate. It anchors. It doesn't shout. It aligns. It doesn't overwhelm. It clarifies. And right now, you are more grounded than you were before, not because everything is clear, but because something essential has settled. You've been waiting for external reinforcement because you're afraid to trust your own discernment. But discernment grows by being exercised, not outsourced. Every time you ignore it, it weakens. Every time you honor it, it sharpens. This moment is asking you to trust the discernment you've been forming for years. You didn't arrive here suddenly. You arrived here slowly, through experience, reflection, correction, and growth. That process matters. You may still feel nervous. That doesn't invalidate the confirmation, it humanizes it. Confidence without humility becomes recklessness. Humility with courage becomes alignment. You are allowed to feel the weight of this decision. Weight does not mean wrong. It means real. Lightweight choices rarely change lives. Meaningful ones always ask you to step forward with awareness. Stop waiting for something louder. Stop delaying for something clearer. The clarity you're waiting for is already present in the way this call refuses to leave you. It has become part of your internal landscape. It shows up in your thoughts, your values, your dissatisfaction with staying as you are. A dissatisfaction is not ingratitude, it is direction. So acknowledge what you already know. Not dramatically, not defiantly, simply honestly. You don't need another sign because the stirring itself is the sign. It has done its work. It has prepared you. It has brought you to the edge of response. Stay here. Trust what has matured within you. The moment for waiting has passed, and the moment for answering has arrived. This is where the conversation turns into a step. Don't look away now. Everything you've heard, felt, resisted, and recognized hath been guiding you toward this single point of agency. Not a dramatic declaration, not a flawless commitment, but a willing response. Answering does not mean you suddenly understand everything. It means you stop withholding yourself from what you already understand enough to begin. Becoming does not start with certainty. It starts with consent. You've been thinking of becoming as a future version of yourself, stronger, wiser, more composed, more confident. But becoming happens in moments like this, when you choose alignment over delay. Every step taken in truth shapes you incrementally. You don't wake up one day transformed. You are transformed by waking up and responding again and again. This moment matters because it sets the direction. Direction determines growth far more than speed ever could. You worry that answering now will lock you into something you can't sustain. But answering is not entrapment. It is orientation. You are orienting your life toward coherence. You are choosing to walk forward with intention instead of circling with doubt. Orientation doesn't remove flexibility, it gives it purpose. You adjust as you move, not because you're lost, but because you're alive and attentive. This step doesn't require you to abandon discernment. It requires you to apply it. You will still question. You will still refine. You will still learn. But those processes will now serve movement instead of replacing it. Learning in motion feels different than learning in isolation. It feels embodied. It feels real. It shapes you from the inside out. As you answer, notice what begins to shift. Not immediately in your circumstances, but in your posture. There is relief in decision, not because everything is solved, but because inner resistance softens. You stop arguing with yourself. You stop rehearsing reasons not to move. You reclaim energy that was tied up in indecision. That energy becomes presence. Presence becomes clarity. Clarity becomes confidence, not the loud kind, but the grounded kind that doesn't need to prove itself. You are not answering to meet expectations. You are answering to inhabit your life more fully. You are stepping into integrity, the alignment between what you know and what you do. Integrity doesn't demand perfection. It requires consistency. And consistency is built one honest step at a time. This is that step. You may feel small as you answer. That's okay. Becoming doesn't begin with feeling powerful. It begins with feeling real. Power grows as you stay engaged. Authority develops as you remain responsive. Identity strengthens as you live it, not as you imagine it. You are not late to this process. You are right on time. So answer now, not with pressure, but with presence. Let your response be simple and sincere. I'm here. I'm willing. I'll begin. Those are enough. The path does not require eloquence, it requires movement. And movement begins here. As you step forward, know this. You are not walking into something foreign. You are walking into yourself, into coherence, into purpose, into a life lived with intention instead of avoidance. Becoming is not a distant destination. It is the unfolding that happens when you finally answer. Stay with this step. Keep moving. You are becoming who you were created to be, starting now. Amen.